Be me, just a regular guy, had a pretty normal life for the most part. Had this best friend, known her for what feels like a lifetime, since we were teenagers. Let's just call her my friend for this story. For years I was the classic idiot, totally into her. She was smart, funny, passionate about her beliefs, and I thought she was amazing. We spent a ton of time together, basically inseparable. The problem was, for her, I was just the buddy, the reliable one, the fixture in her life. I was okay with that for a long time, figuring maybe one day she'd see me differently. Spoiler alert, that was some top-tier wishful thinking. The dynamic of our friendship really started to show its true colors a year or two ago. It began subtly, but then it became a pattern. I remember this one night. It was super late, maybe 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was about to go to sleep, had to be up early. Phone rings. It's her. I answer, and she's sobbing, completely hysterical. My first thought is that something terrible happened, like a family emergency. Nope. The guy she'd been seeing for a grand total of 3 weeks had just ghosted her. He wasn't replying to her texts. For the next 2 hours, I sat there on the phone, listening to the whole saga, every detail of their last date, every text message analyzed for hidden meaning. She went on this massive rant about how he was a textbook narcissist, how he was afraid of emotional intimacy and probably had a fragile ego. All these buzzwords she picked up from somewhere. She kept saying that men were raised to be emotionally stunted and that it was a symptom of toxic masculinity. My job was to just sit there and agree. You're right. He doesn't deserve you. You're too good for him. I dispensed these lines like a vending machine. By the time we hung up, it was past 3 a.m. and my ear was hot from the phone. I was exhausted, but I told myself that's what best friends do. That was just the start. That kind of thing became the norm. A week later, my lunch break gets interrupted by a frantic call. Her car had broken down and was at the shop, but she needed a ride back to her apartment. The mechanic's garage was on the complete opposite side of town from my office. She couldn't possibly take the bus. It was gross and inconvenient. So I spent my entire 1-hour break driving through traffic to pick her up. The whole car ride, she complained. Complained about the mechanic, said he was trying to mansplain the engine problems to her. Apparently, he was being condescending by explaining what a serpentine belt was. She felt he was treating her like she was stupid just because she was a woman. I just nodded along, keeping my eyes on the road, dropped her off, didn't even get a real thank you, more of a thanks talk later, as she slammed the door. I got back to my desk late, with a stomach growling because I'd skipped lunch. It was a constant stream of little things like that. She'd text me pictures from a dressing room, asking for my opinion on an outfit for a date. I'd give my honest thoughts, and she'd almost always do the opposite. She'd then tell me my choice was wrong and that I didn't understand fashion. Then why ask me in the first place? One weekend, she bought a massive, complicated bookshelf from one of those Swedish furniture stores. Guess who got the call to come over and build it? I spent about 4 hours on her living room floor with a tiny Allen key and a confusing diagram of parts. My back was killing me. The entire time, she was on her couch, scrolling through her phone. She'd occasionally look up and say something helpful like, "Are you sure that piece goes there?" Or she'd complain that the instructions were clearly written by men for men because they were illogical. When I was finally done, covered in sweat and sawdust, she announced she was ordering pizza to celebrate. A nice gesture, I thought. The pizza arrives, the delivery guy is at the door. She turns to me with a sheepish look and says, "Oh my God, I totally left my wallet in my other purse. Can you get this? I'll pay you back." I knew right then I would never see that money again. I paid for the pizza. We ate, and I went home feeling like an unpaid handyman. The cycle just kept repeating. Every time a new guy from a dating app disappointed her, I was the one who had to pick up the pieces. My phone became her personal diary for dating horror stories. Each guy was worse than the last, and each one was a new case study for her theories on the flaws of modern men. I was her emotional support system, her driver, her tech support, her furniture assembler. I was whatever she needed me to be in that moment. But it was never about me. If I ever tried to talk about something I was going through, a problem at my job or something, her eyes would glaze over. She'd wait for me to finish, then immediately pivot back to her own drama. Yeah, that sounds tough. Anyway, you won't believe what this guy just texted me. After months of this, I was feeling completely drained. The feelings I had for her were starting to get buried under a pile of resentment. I decided I couldn't keep living like this, in this state of limbo. I had to know one way or the other. I had to tell her how I felt. It was a stupid, foolish plan born out of desperation. I invited her out to dinner, not pizza on the floor, but a real sit-down restaurant, a nice one. I thought maybe if I changed the context, she'd see me in a different light. She was excited, probably because she thought she was getting a free fancy meal. We sat down, ordered, made some small talk. My hands were sweating. My heart was pounding in my chest. After the main course arrived, I just went for it. I told her everything. That I'd had feelings for her for years, that I valued our friendship more than anything, but I was wondering if it could be something more. I told her I saw how amazing she was, and that I wanted a chance to be the person who treated her right. It was all very earnest and probably very clumsy. I finished my little speech and looked at her, waiting for a reaction. The warm, friendly expression on her face just vanished. It was replaced by a look of profound disappointment, like I had just let her down in the worst way possible. She put her fork down. She sighed, a really long, dramatic sigh. "Oh," she said, her voice flat. "You too?" It felt like a punch to the gut. "You too?" Like I was just another guy in a long line of disappointments. Then came the lecture. She told me she was so disappointed in me. She thought I was different, that I was one of the good ones. She explained that by introducing romantic feelings, I was fundamentally changing the dynamic of our relationship, that I was trying to turn our pure, platonic friendship into something possessive and transactional. She said she cherished our friendship because it was her safe space, a place where she didn't have to deal with the pressures of male expectations. And now I had violated that space. She told me that men always ruin things by making it about physical attraction. The final nail in the coffin was when she looked at me with this pitying expression and said, "I love you as a friend. You're my best friend. Please don't make this weird." I was completely crushed, not just rejected, but made to feel like I was a bad person for having feelings. The rest of the dinner was agonizingly silent. When the check came, she just looked out the window as if she didn't notice it. I paid. Of course I paid. The car ride back to her place was the quietest 10 minutes of my life. I dropped her off. She gave me a quick, awkward good night and rushed inside. I drove home in a daze. When I got back to my apartment, I just sat on my couch in the dark for about an hour. I replayed the entire conversation in my head. Her words echoed, "safe space," "violated," "you too," and then something inside me just snapped. It was a moment of absolute clarity. She wasn't my friend. A friend doesn't use you. A friend doesn't see your vulnerability as a burden. A friend doesn't treat you like a free service provider. Our entire relationship wasn't a friendship. It was a resource arrangement where I was the only resource. She didn't value me as a person. She valued my utility. I stood up, walked over to my phone. I opened her contact. I looked at her name for a second. Then I hit block. It felt surprisingly good. Then I went onto my computer and unfriended and unfollowed her on every single social media platform. I scrubbed her from my digital life completely. I knew the fallout would be coming, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't care. I slept better that night than I had in years. The next few days were quiet. Blissfully quiet. No late-night calls, no texts with trivial dramas. Then the messages started coming in. First from a number I didn't recognize. It was her. "Is your phone broken? Why aren't you answering?" I deleted it. Then a message from a mutual acquaintance. "Hey, your friend is trying to reach you. She says it's urgent." Ignored. The tone of her messages started to change. They went from confused to annoyed. "Okay, this isn't funny anymore. Just talk to me." Ignoring me is so immature. I thought you were better than that. And finally, they became angry. "After everything I've shared with you, this is how you treat me? Unbelievable." Each message just reinforced my decision. It was all about her, her needs, her feelings. Not once did she ask if I was okay after I had poured my heart out to her. I held firm. I didn't reply to anything. With all this newfound free time and mental energy, I decided to focus on myself. It sounds like a cliché, but that's exactly what I did. I took the money I would have spent on dinners and coffees for her and got a gym membership. I started going 3 or 4 times a week. At first it was hard. I was weak and didn't know what I was doing, but I stuck with it. I started seeing progress. It felt good to be building myself up instead of propping someone else up. I also decided to get back into an old hobby I'd neglected, hiking. I used to love it, but stopped having time for it because my weekends were always on call for her latest crisis. I found a local hiking group online and signed up for a weekend trek. I was a bit nervous going into a group of strangers, but I forced myself to do it. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. The air was fresh, the views were incredible, and the people were surprisingly cool. And that's where I met her, the new girl. Let's just call her Nicole. We started talking while we were climbing a particularly steep section of the trail. She was funny, down to earth, and had a really warm smile. There was no drama, no pretense. We just talked. We talked about movies, about hiking, about stupid stuff. After the hike, a few of us went to a local cafe to grab coffee. I sat with Nicole. The conversation was easy, effortless. When the waitress brought the check, I instinctively reached for my wallet to pay for both of us. Before I could, Nicole had already put her card down. She looked at me and smiled. I got this. I was genuinely taken aback. It was such a small thing, but it felt huge. It was a gesture of equality, of partnership. I insisted on at least paying for my own, so we split it. We exchanged numbers before we left. I wasn't expecting anything, but she texted me later that day, saying she had a great time. We started texting back and forth. A few days later, I asked her out on a proper date. She said yes immediately. Our first date was amazing. We just clicked. I learned that she was kind, thoughtful, and incredibly self-sufficient. A few weeks into seeing each other, my laptop started acting up. I'm pretty good with computers, so I spent an evening taking it apart and fixing the issue. I mentioned it to her in passing on a phone call. The next day, she showed up at my door after work. She was holding a container that smelled incredible. She had made me a huge pan of homemade lasagna. She said, "I figured since you were busy fixing your laptop last night, you probably didn't have time to cook. This should last you a few days." I almost didn't know how to react. No one had ever done something so thoughtful for me without expecting something in return. It wasn't a transaction, it was just care. Our relationship grew from there. It was healthy, it was balanced. She respected my time and opinions. I respected hers. We built each other up. We were a team. For the first time in my adult life, I was in a relationship where I felt seen and appreciated for who I was, not for what I could do for someone. I was genuinely happy. I had almost completely forgotten about my old life and my old friend. I hadn't heard a thing from her or about her in months. The silence was golden. I thought that chapter of my life was finally completely closed. I was wrong. Fast forward about 6 months. Nicole and I were going strong, better than strong actually. We decided to take our first big trip together, a week-long vacation to a place with mountains and a beach. It was perfect. We spent our days hiking and our evenings just relaxing. We took a bunch of photos, as you do. When we got back, feeling refreshed and happy, Nicole made a little album and posted some pictures online. Nothing crazy, just a few shots of us smiling with beautiful scenery in the background. I posted one on my profile too, one of my favorites of the two of us. I didn't think anything of it. My profile was pretty private, mostly just for family and a few close friends. Apparently, one of those close friends was still a mutual acquaintance with my ex-friend. That's the only way I can figure she saw it. About a week after we got back from our trip, I was leaving the gym. I had just finished a workout, feeling pretty good, and was walking to my car in the parking lot. I heard my name being shouted. "Kevin!" The voice was familiar, but it took me a second to place it. It sounded raw, filled with anger. I turned around, and there she was, my old friend. She was standing about 20 feet away, and she looked completely different. Not physically, but her entire energy was just vibrating with rage. My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen or spoken to this person in half a year. She marched right up to me, her face red and her eyes narrowed. Before I could even say a word, she started yelling, right there in the middle of the parking lot. "So this is why," she screamed, pointing a finger at my chest. "This is why you've been ignoring me. You threw away years of friendship for her." I was so stunned I couldn't even form a sentence. "I saw the pictures," she continued, her voice dripping with venom. "You, on vacation with that Barbie doll." I finally found my voice. "What are you doing here? How did you even find me?" "It doesn't matter," she shot back. What matters is that you're a backstabbing coward. You abandoned me. Her use of the word abandoned was what really set me off. Abandoned you? I said, my voice dangerously calm. Are you serious right now? The absurdity of the situation was starting to sink in. She was the victim here, in her mind. She went on a tirade, listing all of her grievances from the past 6 months. Do you have any idea what I've been through? She demanded. My car broke down on the highway a few months ago. I had to pay for a tow truck myself because my best friend decided to ghost me. I just stared at her. My mom got sick. She had to have surgery. I had to go through that all alone, with no one to talk to. I needed you, and you were gone. Every complaint was an emergency that, in the past, would have had me dropping everything to run to her side. She finished her rant with the most incredible line of all. I trusted you, she said, her voice cracking with fake emotion. I told you everything, and you just threw me away like I was garbage the second someone better looking came along. For a moment, I felt that old instinct kick in, the urge to apologize, to make it better. Then I looked at her face, contorted with self-pity and entitlement, and the feeling vanished. A cold wave of clarity washed over me, even stronger than the one I'd felt 6 months ago. I took a deep breath. You're right about one thing, I began, my voice steady. I did find someone better. Her eyes widened in shock, not expecting me to fight back. But it's not for the reason you think. It's not about looks. Our friendship, I said, making air quotes with my fingers, was a one-way street. It was all about you, all the time. When did you ever call me just to see how I was doing? When did you ever ask about my life and actually listen to the answer? She opened her mouth to protest, but I kept going. For years, I was your personal assistant, your chauffeur, your therapist, your handyman, and I did it because I cared about you. And what did I get in return? You made me feel like a burden for having feelings for you. You lectured me about violating your safe space because I dared to be honest. I took a step closer. You talk about your car breaking down. How many times did I drive you around? How many times did I help you with things and never asked for a dime? You talk about your mom being sick. That's terrible, and I'm sorry to hear that. But when my dad was in the hospital a few years ago, I mentioned it to you once. You said, that sucks, and then immediately started talking about some guy who sent you a weird message on a dating app. She flinched. She remembered. The difference between you and Nicole, I said, my voice losing its anger and just becoming tired, is that Nicole is a partner. I support her, and she supports me. It's a two-way street. It's called respect. You don't know the first thing about respect, because you're too wrapped up in your own world to see anyone else as a real person. You didn't lose a friend, I said, delivering the final blow. You lost an employee who finally decided to quit. She just stood there, speechless. Her face had gone pale. All the righteous anger had drained out of her, replaced by a stunned, hollow look. She had no comeback. There was nothing she could say, because she knew every word I said was true. I didn't wait for a response. I just turned around, got in my car, and drove away. I watched her in my rearview mirror, a small, pathetic figure shrinking in the distance. Driving home, I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt free. A huge weight that I didn't even realize I was still carrying had just been lifted off my shoulders for good. When I got back to my apartment, Nicole was there. She could tell something was off. She asked me what was wrong. I told her the whole story, everything, from the years of one-sided friendship to the confrontation in the parking lot. She listened patiently, without interrupting. When I was done, she didn't say, "I told you so," or "she sounds crazy." She just came over, gave me a long hug, and said, "I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I'm really glad you stood up for yourself." And right then, I knew I had made the right choice. That was the end of it, at least for me. I did hear about her one last time, a few months later. That same mutual acquaintance ran into me at a coffee shop. He looked awkward, but he told me a little bit about what happened to her after our confrontation. Apparently, she had tried to rally our old friend group to her side. She told them this sob story about how I had betrayed her and broken her heart. At first, some of them were sympathetic, but then her behavior got more and more erratic. With me gone, she had no central support system, so she started leaning on everyone else all at once. She started treating all of them the way she had treated me. The constant demands for favors, the endless circular conversations about her dating life, The complete lack of interest in their own problems. People got tired of it, fast. One by one, they started to distance themselves. They stopped answering her calls. They started making excuses to not hang out. The friend told me the last he'd seen of her was on social media. Her posts had become a constant stream of bitter, angry rants, long essays about how modern dating was broken, how all men were trash, how it was impossible to find loyal friends. Her entire online presence had become a shrine to her own victimhood. She was surrounded by a small echo chamber of equally miserable people who all agreed with her that the world was unfair. She never stopped to consider that she was the common denominator in all of her failed relationships. She got exactly what she had accused me of wanting, a transactional world. But she was the one offering nothing of value, and she was furious that no one wanted to be her friend for free anymore. I felt a brief flash of pity for her, but it passed quickly. She built her own prison of bitterness, and she was the only one with the key. As for me, life is good. Nicole and I are still together. We moved in together a while back. Our relationship isn't a dramatic movie. It's just easy. It's comfortable, supportive, and full of mutual respect. It's amazing how much your life can improve when you cut out the one person who's been draining all your energy. Sometimes I think back to the guy I used to be, the one who would have dropped everything for a late-night phone call. I barely recognize him anymore, and I've never been more grateful for that.